All right. Well, Wayne Hippo, thanks for coming on to the podcast today.
Pleasure to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, and we're actually here at the UNCW Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship, which for me is really cool because I'm an alumni of UNCW,
Yeah.
and you have some history here as well.
Yeah, when we first expanded to Wilmington in 2017, this was our first home.
Yeah.
Love it here. It's an amazing resource, and the community should be proud of it. And they're doing great things day in and day out for entrepreneurs or businesses coming to the community. Yeah, it's one of my favorite places in Wilmington.
Yeah. Well, let's start there and just what is your story and what does your business do? Let's start there. What does your business do? What's your story? And how did you guys get down to Wilmington? What made you come down to Wilmington, North Carolina?
We've really evolved over the years, Chris. So we started out doing pure staffing, if you will, sort of providing resources to businesses in need on the technology stack. And as time went on, we started to recognize that the people we were working with, we enjoyed working with, and they were feeling like they didn't have a permanent home. They were doing temporary gigs.
Right.
So we started hiring people and transitioned from basically a staffing company to a solutions company so that
Right.
we employ our developers now. So we write custom software for businesses that either are frustrated with not being able to find their own software, or the stuff they have is old and it needs rewritten, or maybe they have 2 or 3 off-the-shelf pieces that aren't communicating.
Yep.
So we work with businesses to sort of solve their problems on the software front, keep their stuff updated. It's been an amazing challenge over the years with huge projects for national companies, but we also do an awful lot with smaller companies too. It's really cool to get somebody started, get them on their way, start their way toward their dreams of their building their business.
Yeah. I mean, I feel like most business conversations now, and has been for years, but I mean, if you're talking about business and growth and strategy, IT and technology is, I mean, one of the, main things that you're talking about as you're trying to build and scale a company.
And it's everywhere. When people first hear what we do, they think of big technology companies that have a lot of software developers. A lot of our clients have no software talent in-house, but have software needs. So we wind up working in the craziest industries, in the craziest verticals that you would never imagine would require that kind of talent or that kind of product to be created. But we find them, they find us, and it really makes it for a real cool relationship because we're truly adding a lot of value that they otherwise don't have.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So how did you were not always in the software field, and I kind of have a little cheat sheet. I know Wayne a little bit, so I'm kind of leading him on here with some of these questions. But so tell us, you were not always in software.
No.
Your first profession was?
So I'm an attorney. I still have my license, but I say I'm a recovering attorney because I'm not in that field anymore. I keep my license out of pride.
It's a lot of hard work to get that thing.
And Chris, I'm the first member of my family to go to college, let alone law school.
Cool. That's awesome.
I'm from Altoona, Pennsylvania. Altoona is a railroad town. Yeah. I was 6th generation there, and every generation before me worked for the railroad.
Wow.
All my grandparents on both sides. So, the chance to go to law school or the chance to go to college was amazing, and then the chance to go to law school was motivated by, I've always had a passion for helping the little guy, and I learned that from my family experiences, and so when I went off to law school, I got a great education at George Washington, and then came back, started building a practice with a firm in central Pennsylvania, and I found, the better I got, the bigger my clients started becoming. And the pressure of, moving up the ladder, next thing you know, I'm representing insurance companies and what have you, and I sort of, was not enjoying what I was doing as much because I'd gotten away from that core tenet or core belief of why I wanted to do it. So wound up forming my own firm, doing what I wanted to do. But the idea of solving problems for the folks that are struggling or having some difficulties was always the appeal.
Yeah.
And as I went through that, my business partner in PS Solutions, Joe Morelli, is my best friend. I mean, I've known him since we met in junior bowling when we were 8 years old. So we know each other. It's been 50 years. And Joe's the technology guy, and he started out as a software developer and sort of went into the business side of it and learned the business side a bit. And his frustrations were becoming that he saw some things going on. We have very core beliefs that we share.
Yeah.
And he just eventually came to me, and I had a lot of experience representing businesses and staffing companies, and I had a big network from some of the other things I did too, on the political side, and we decided to shut the door, put the business plan together, and go for it.
Yeah.
And that was 15 years ago, and it was the best move I ever made.
Yeah. And so, I was going to ask you, what time period, or when was it when you guys officially started? And was it called PS Solutions at the time when you started, or?
The formal name of the company, remember, we started out as staffing, so it was Professional Staffing Solutions.
Got it.
And then as we transitioned to a solutions company and our own employees, the word staffing sends the wrong message.
Right. Solutions, so, that's the message, right?
And that's what we do.
Yeah.
Like I said at the beginning, not so much, but all of our people are full-time employees. We don't send anything offshore. It's one of our core beliefs that all of this should be done in the United States, that technology is way too important to be trusting sending work overseas anywhere.
Yep.
And that, so it's not just security, but it's about what are we going to do as a country, and why haven't we solved this problem? So we've been very aggressive at finding local talent, promoting the creation of talent here in the United States, and proving that it can be done here in the United States. So
yeah, I got a feeling. I mean, just with your family and being in the railroad and being in that part of the country, I got a sense there's a big sense of pride of American-made, American labor, hard work, rolling up your sleeves, and it kind of sounds like that is a core belief that you guys have kind of brought forward into the business.
Yeah, and I think another thing that I learned, while I was practicing law, a thing that used to drive me crazy was I practiced in Altoona, right, a mid-sized town, central part of the state.
Yeah.
And there was always sort of an underlying belief that, if you really needed somebody smart, you had to go to Philadelphia.
Yeah.
The Philadelphia lawyer,
Right,
and to me that used to drive me crazy that, I'm sitting in Altoona just as capable as somebody who's paying much more rent every month than I am. So I don't know who's smarter, but
that's fair.
so we actually adopted that in finding talent in local small communities, and sort of taking our message to the bigger environments, whether it's Pittsburgh or whether it's Raleigh or what have you, and sort of bringing the work back for our folks to knock it out of the park.
Yeah.
It's been working great.
No, that's awesome. And I mean, so from when you guys started 15 years ago, it was you and Joe in an office somewhere, right? Just doing staffing.
Well, Joe tells a story that when we first got started, just like a lot of small businesses, there's no, it's not like the clients are beating the door down, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Our first office was along the railroad tracks in Pennsylvania.
Very fitting, huh?
And Joe used to sit there and watch the trains go by and look at the companies that were pushing freight, thinking, they must be doing well. They got 15 cars on that train. We started making lists of people to contact, all right?
That's amazing.
Yeah, I'm not sure how it worked.
Did you guys win any business from that strategy?
So here's my funny failure story on that. I had served in politics for a long time. Actually, had been the mayor of Altoona and left office in 2010, 2009.
Okay.
And I had some great friends in politics. So we made arrangements with our local state rep, who was great to me. I mean, Rick Geist had helped my career so much and had been a great mentor. He made arrangements, hearing the story about the railroad, for us to meet with the top technology person at Conrail. We're like 4 months old. Right?
Yeah.
And so we drive to Harrisburg with our best clip-on ties and what have you. And we get there, and we're meeting with this guy from Conrail.
Yeah.
And I think, oh, this is it. And so, the state rep's there, and the guy from Conrail comes in. We do our little song and dance, which I'm sure probably we look like two hayseeds from Altoona showing up. And this guy looked us right in the eye and said, "There's not a chance in the world that I'm going to hire you guys." And he didn't pull any punches. I mean, he just let us have it with both barrels about how terrible. There's no way how would. And frankly, he was right.
Yeah.
But the political guy kind of oversold everything, and that's okay.
Yeah.
And then he left. The guy finally leaves, and Joe and I are like looking at each other, red face, and the politician in the room says, "Gentlemen, you have no idea how great a meeting it was you just had."
Yeah.
And so that's been like a tagline for us over the years. Anytime something blows up, we have no idea how good this was for us.
That's
right now.
amazing.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, talk about a learning opportunity, right?
Oh yeah.
I mean, and I think so many small business owners, I mean, it's, you hear about it's, just, a lot of failures before you can get to, a success. And, it takes 10 years to become an overnight success and all that type of stuff. But it's like, you got to start somewhere.
Yeah.
And
you have no idea what works or what have you. And you get the breaks from the craziest places. And it wasn't maybe 3 weeks later that we got a call from, I'll say it was Sheets, who had a big need and said, "We need help." And they knew us and they knew Joe from a past life. And I've been pretty close to the Sheets family all my life. But they asked us, is there any way you could hire 2 developers for us and get them working right away? Absolutely.
Unbelievable. A huge brand.
Yeah, huge break.
Are they
big brand, yeah.
Are they like headquartered in the Altoona area?
Yeah, they're headquartered in Altoona. And,
No way.
their first store was 2 blocks from where I grew up, and
Cool.
I think now they're pushing towards 700 or 800 stores, and they're coming to Wilmington.
I was about to say, you brought them down to Wilmington.
I wish
huh?
I could take credit for it. I've been begging for them to come, but I understand there's a lot of Sheets going to be showing up in the next few years, so
That's
it's really good.
cool. Yeah. So how did you guys get the lead for Sheets? You just small town, knowing people?
Working the contacts, turning over, LinkedIn was in its earlier days, but we had contacts there, and literally the Sheets family went to my church growing up, and I played baseball with a lot of them, and so the connections were there. But Joe made a phone call at the right time, and they called us back, and it was a huge early win.
Yeah,
it helped quite a bit.
Well, part of this podcast is to share some knowledge for people that are trying to start a business or have already started a business and been successful. But I think it's really cool to hear your story, that how things kind of tend to come together. I mean, you could come up with a plan and the best plan in the world, but at the end of the day, you got to execute, and you kind of got to get lucky on a couple things as well.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, going back to the beginning stages of PS Solutions, and you guys coming up with this idea, like, tell me about what the plan was at the time. Like, how did you guys come up with it?
The plan was, we saw these services being done. There were things we didn't like with the offshoring. There were things we thought we could do better.
Right. Okay.
But we started out, again, the initial model was, just staffing. Find somebody and either place them for a fee or place them under a short-term contract, and sort of just be the middleman. So, but that we've evolved a number of times over the years. One of the things we've learned is we've got to keep changing with how we do things and how we target our clients and figure out, you know, where to find folks. I mean, we are substantially different this year than we were 5 years ago, than we were 10 and 15 years ago.
Right, exactly.
So the willingness to keep evolving and figuring out what's new. I mean, we're sitting here in Wilmington, and that was a decision we made 7 or 8 years ago, and we almost made a big mistake. I mean, we were initially heading toward Myrtle Beach, and no offense to my friends in Myrtle Beach, but we wouldn't have survived had we opened up in Myrtle Beach instead of coming to Wilmington. And I came to Wilmington, frankly, we found it on a fluke. We knew we wanted to be about 2 hours or so away from the Research Triangle.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And but we had great flights into Myrtle out of Pittsburgh and out of Latrobe, suburban.
Or Latrobe, yeah.
And it seemed like a godsend. And fortunately, on LinkedIn, when I had been there, one of my councilmen had moved here, and I stayed in touch with him. And we're heading down, and I said, I'll reach out to Joe and talk to him and said, hey, we're going to probably open a location in Myrtle Beach. Why don't you come down and meet us for dinner? And he basically said, that's a mistake. You need to drive up here. And he was very honest with me, and that's what a friend does, right? I mean, he tells you the truth. And he openly said, you're about to make a big mistake. You need to go to Wilmington. And Linda and I drove up and had dinner a couple nights and started figuring it out and looking around and saying, oh my God, he's right.
Oh my gosh.
And so here we are in Wilmington.
Yeah, and I mean, just what a great place to be right now.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of great places to be, but I'm pretty partial to Wilmington, I guess.
We have nothing but good things to say. Wilmington's been great to us, and it's definitely been a fantastic move for the company.
So tell me about your organization now. How many employees do you guys have?
Right now, I'm waiting for a phone call to see if I'm getting another one, but I think we're at 42 right now.
Holy smokes.
Yeah, and that's all staff, and most of it's the tech talent. I don't write a line of code. I haven't written any code since freshman year at Penn State when it was Fortran and you were typing onto the cards. But the talent we've been able to accumulate, I'm so happy with, and amazing people who do really incredible things for us. That's been a really cool part of this business, is getting to know a lot of those folks and their talents, because their talents far exceed anything I could do.
Yeah. So, I mean, another conversation that comes up with every business owner is talent, is in attracting, retaining, getting good talent. How have you guys, what has been the most successful avenues for getting, good talent?
Sure. We learned early on and adapted early on to the fact that software development is a talent and it's art form as well. So if you have the brains, you don't have to have a 4-year degree to do this job. And I know we're sitting in UNCW, but I think a lot of the folks at UNCW agree. I mean, there are other training things that they do. And so we started identifying non-traditional sources for our talent and letting people prove themselves. One of the things I learned when I went I went to the National Law Center at George Washington University, a big prestigious national school, and then wound up going back and practicing in Altoona, and actually Hollidaysburg, suburban Altoona. And one of the things I loved about that move, though, was instead of sitting in some library researching for the first 7 years of my career, those guys that I worked for were really good at matching your abilities to the level they were going to push you to. And so giving somebody a chance early on to prove themselves under appropriate guidance and appropriate training is huge. And so we take that, and we wind up hiring a lot of folks who have 2-year degrees or business school degrees, or have come out of boot camps. I think the number is, we've hired 2 or 3 people that are entirely self-taught.
Wow.
Kids out of high school who, again, we're not throwing them in, creating huge algorithms,
Right.
but they know how to code, and we have a built-in system in our company so that they're developing software for us as a client. And so they're on real projects, even though maybe there's not a third-party client.
Right.
And that allows our senior team to look at everybody. And some folks show up and they need 6 weeks to prove themselves. Some need 6 months. But sort of using that tool, using that unusual talent base, people that just are looking at a chance. The little guy who couldn't afford a 4-year degree, but went to a 2-year business school and has a coding background, and they've been writing code, for their family since they were 12.
Right.
We love giving those folks a chance to prove themselves, and man, they've done it.
That's really cool.
So we do that. In 2012, we formed a foundation, the PS Solutions Foundation, in our own small little way. We're tiny, but recognizing that there were no women in the field. Both Joe and I had daughters who were going into software development or technology in some form. And my oldest, Stephanie, was telling me she'd be in a class of 50 and there'd be 2 or 3 women in the whole class. And you can see it. I mean, you would put an ad out or what have you back in the day when we used to do that. You get 50 resumes in, you wouldn't see a resume coming from a woman. It'd be unusual.
Right.
And with our belief that the software should be done here, we want that talent base, that net to find people thrown wider.
Absolutely.
And so we've been working with the PS Solutions Foundation to encourage young girls, young women into considering software development as a field, and that's been a lot of fun over the years, different projects we've done to help kick that down. So finding the talent is a big part of what we do.
I mean, that's probably like one of the core competencies and like the core processes of your business. I would suspect. I mean, I have a similar business, right? It's a service business. We provide solutions for people, and every business is, it's critical to have. It's all about, people are your most important assets. But when you're a service-based business and like truly your economic driver is the people, I mean, that's got to be your core competency is sourcing good talent, right?
You hear all the time, it sounds trite, people are most important assets, but just like your business and ours, it truly is. I mean,
Truly.
You can have great people building widgets, but you're selling widgets.
Right.
We're selling a service.
Exactly.
And it's all about people. So finding those people and having enough, and I'll throw another little bit of wrench into what we do, which is the way we've structured our services is to work for us as a software developer. You not only have to have the talent to do it, but you can't be sort of the traditional, I'll say the word nerdy, but the stereotypical heads down, you've got to, working for us, you've got to be able to talk to clients, you've got to be able to understand their business needs. So they've got to be a lot more rounded than most. And we have different degrees, but for the most part, when I'm looking for developers, I still do a lot of the initial screening, because even though I'm not the technology guy, I've learned who's going to be a fit and who's going to be able to, talk to the rest of the team, talk to the clients, and fully understand it. So we kind of even raised the difficulty level to find talent another notch, which is why we've got to be creative.
Absolutely. Now, you brought up a really good discussion point, and it's what you said really resonates with me, because same thing with accounting, right? People think of accountants, the green visor, the 10 key, the pocket protector, just head down debits and credits and all that. But again, I think that the value proposition that you're talking about is that we're more than just technical developers. We can speak the language of business. We can understand what it actually takes to run a business. And it's the same thing I've been trying to do with ours is, hey, we're more than just accountants. We know what it. We're humans.
But
Yeah.
and it allows, with my experience with you, it allows you to help in the strategy, not just what the numbers
Right.
are,
Exactly.
but here's what you got to be thinking about. Even though you're an accountant, as you were saying,
Yeah.
the better ones are the ones that are able to say, look, I understand this. Here's how you need to strategize to get there.
Exactly.
And that's a huge value add.
Yeah, it is because you have a business owner that has an idea for a system that they want to implement, and if you're not asking the challenging questions, and they're just like, hey, I want you to build this, you go and spend 50 grand building something that really doesn't make sense.
Right.
Whereas that time you guys put in on the front end with the the due diligence process helps refine so that the output is more what the customer actually really needs, huh?
Yeah, and some parts of that too are even the need to keep the client under control so they're not getting distracted.
Yeah.
Because you can, particularly in software, the more you get into it, especially given that we're working with business people who aren't necessarily tech savvy, but as they learn about it, they learn, oh, it can do this too, and this too, and this too. Mm-hmm. And they're constantly sort of getting away or sort of getting distracted from the original mission. Sometimes that's good. Sometimes there's an add-on there that's appropriate, but other times the real part of the service you're providing is saying, hey, let's stay on message. Let's get this done, and we'll think about this idea in version 2.
Right, exactly.
Yeah.
How challenging is it to hey, this is a version 2 type thing versus a version 1? Yeah, how do you?
It's like everyone else. It depends. Some clients handle that better than others,
Right.
and some you got to let them know, hey, other things can be done, and others are jumping into it and getting overly excited. So it's a matter of understanding the client and where we're trying to go and where they need to go, and
Yeah.
it can be all over the place.
So I'm gonna change topics a little bit, but you mentioned you were the mayor of Altoona. We got to talk about that because that's amazing. How the heck did you get into politics?
I'd always had an interest in politics. I started off, thank God I changed, but I started off as a political science major at Penn State.
Okay.
And
is that a typical track for people that want to become a lawyer, to start with political science?
It is.
Or?
It's a mistake, frankly.
Okay.
But you see a lot of people with poli-sci backgrounds going into law. But I got some great advice from a first-year professor at Penn State saying, what if you change your mind and you don't want to go to law school? You're not going to open the one ads and say wanted political scientist. I mean, what do you love? What are you interested in? What is really cool? Mm-hmm. And so that was good advice. And then I had a chance to do an internship with the gentleman I mentioned early in my career, and I wound up working my way through different stages and started practicing law. And the then mayor of the city had reached out to me. He was an attorney, mm-hmm. and he was a Democrat and I was a Republican, but he said, I need help. Would you be willing to serve on a commission? Mm-hmm. And so I wound up serving on the Altoona Housing Authority, mm-hmm. and cutting my teeth there.
Yeah.
And after 4 years of that, the council was in massive disarray, and there was all sorts of infighting, and arrests, and yeah, it was crazy.
Classic.
And several members of the business community came together and said, let's run together as a team.
Okay.
And go in and clean it out. So we did that, and I first got elected to council and served under a good friend who was a mayor for 8 years, and when he hung it up, my belief, I'm a big term limits guy, mm-hmm. and I believe 12 years is the max anybody should be doing anything. Mm-hmm. So I had 4 years left and said, I'll do either up or out. So did 4 years as the mayor, and it was interesting.
Yeah. So what did you learn from your public service, and also, specifically being a mayor? What did you learn from that to be able to translate into business, or what did your business, kind of experience translate to trying to be a good mayor?
So A lot of things. I mean, it was great. I joke about it, you know, and make fun of it. And people ask, "Do you miss being mayor?" And I say, "Yeah, I miss it like I miss my kidney stones." But it was great. Um, Met a lot of amazing people, and I think one of the big things I learned was the importance of making certain you educate yourself on a decision, trying to remove as much of the emotion from the argument, not the
Right.
cause,
Right.
but the emotion from the argument as possible, so that you're making the right decision. So, you know, I learned even when I was at the housing authority, occasionally you'll wind up in something that seems controversial by the media standards, but if 15 people are showing up yelling at you, it's not a lot. It's very intimidating, especially the first time it happens.
Right.
But you've got to educate yourself on, you know, what's really happening here, what's going on. Appreciate, you know, the emotions of the issue, but not allow the emotions to affect the decision. Doing what's right.
Yeah.
So figure out what's right, and you'll wind up sleeping a lot better at night.
Yep.
No question.
Well, I mean, I think that, I mean, that's something that translates into being a business leader, a business owner. I mean, is taking emotion out of it, because it's difficult using data to come up with, you know, to make a decision, but also, you know, just doing the right thing.
Yeah, and don't get me wrong. I'm not saying, when I say taking emotion out of the decision, like our emotions about wanting software developed here, hiring Americans to do that, the importance of all that. That's all. There's a strong emotional element to that.
Okay. Yeah.
But in making decisions to advance that, pulling the emotion of any specific decision out is pretty important.
When did I don't know if you know this, but when did the offshoring of software development and like IT stuff, when did that really start? Was that the 90s? Was that the early 2000s?
80s and 90s, as the technology exploded. You know, we've not done the best job in this country of keeping up with the education toward that technology. We're still, unfortunately, entrenched in, you know, some of the old ways of thinking with education, and, you know, not committing the resources to it, especially something this important.
Yep.
So the world was able to quickly move ahead of us on a lot of that. And I shouldn't say ahead of us, but they were able to create more of a demand and supply because they had the drive, recognizing the ability of technology to deliver great paying jobs and life-changing products.
Yeah.
That seemed like a no-brainer for them, whereas we were content to sort of take the high-end stuff and you know, push the other stuff overseas, because under, and I can go on for hours on this subject, but under the belief that somehow it's cheaper.
Right.
I'll debate that with a few people.
Yeah, no, I'd like to talk about that, because I mean, you know, what is the hidden cost? You know, it's, yeah, okay, I'm paying $10 an hour as opposed to $40 an hour. And again, nothing against anybody overseas or anything like that, but I mean, what are the hidden costs of working with a team that's in a different time zone, working with a team that has a different perspective, you know, a different culture, working with a team that isn't able to actually come and visit a business, boots on the ground, and actually understand their operations?
Yeah.
I mean,
all those things are there. Again, that could be a 4-hour discussion someday.
Yeah.
The easiest way to understand it is healthcare. The U.S. healthcare system is unbelievably complex and confusing for those of us that live here and were born and raised. Do you really think you can understand that healthcare system if you're sitting 15,000 miles away in another country? I mean, and you know, maybe the ones and zeros of the code make sense, but the actual business extrapolation of it is layers and layers and layers more complex. One of our first projects, the really huge ones, came from, we were actually trying to recruit somebody to come work for us. And it was somebody that Joe had known from a past life, and when he answered the phone, told us, "Oh, I just took a job. I need your help." So it went from a call, and they had the company that hired him had sent a huge software project off. I won't mention where, and 2 years and $1.6 million later had nothing.
My gosh.
They had a disaster, and we had to put together a team to analyze everything. And I mean, there were lawsuits on the other end, so we had to start from scratch and rebuild the entire code for them, and delivered it and got it done on time. And I think on a $2 million project, we were within like $75,000 on the estimate. So a lot of things went right for us there.
Yeah.
But it's a story of, it can work, but it's a gamble. And what do you want to gamble on?
Yeah. There's someone smarter than I were talking, and he was asking me about my business model and just kind of comparing it to his. He's in IT, and it's a service business in the IT infrastructure type thing. And, and he said that one thing that he really brings into his value proposition and sales process is that we're not selling blocks of time. What we're selling is value. And, while, trying to calculate what that value is, we might have to, we use hours. We got to use something to kind of figure that out. But I mean, again, if you're looking at an opportunity or looking, at an option where it's just, hey, it's X dollars an hour, great, versus, hey, well, yeah, this one's more expensive, but here's the other, here's the benefits of doing so. And so how would you kind of describe your business model as, with that lens?
Sure. Well, we kind of look at it that way too in a lot of respects. And a great example would be somebody who has an idea for software to make their lives easier. The question is, we can make your life easier by hiring somebody else to do it. What would that cost you?
Yeah.
And you'd have to train that person, and then they might leave. And whereas putting the software in place might seem expensive, but it's way cheaper than the amount of money you're going to have to spend otherwise. So that kind of value we can point out to customers all the time.
Yeah.
But let me ask you about a value issue too. Because I think back to whether I'm practicing law. One of the things I love about this is we're constantly in different industries, different clients, different problems, and you are too. Isn't there something cool about what we do that you have to be able to either figure out the new industry or you're not looking at the same problem every day.
Exactly.
That's one of the things I truly love about my job is that sort of diversity of problems that we have to attack and solve in different industries for different people of different company sizes. I mean, it's to me that's one of the coolest things we do. I'm sure you have a similar.
No, exactly. I mean, because working across different industries, different business models, different scales of businesses, you see what works well, you see what doesn't work well. You can take a solution that you've seen somewhere else and try to implement it. And there's a lot of value to that. Yeah. I mean, it's like, hey, whereas if you hire somebody to do it full time, they only see one thing, right? So yeah, hey, I can hire this guy for $100,000 and have him full time, where I could hire Wayne and his crew for a little bit more and they're not full time. Well, again, I mean, what's the value? What's the deliverable going to be? And if it takes this guy 2 years to accomplish what you guys are able to do in 6 months because of the depth of your bench and because of the experience you have looking at different problems and delivering solutions, I mean, so those are. It's hard to quantify that for business owners sometimes, though.
Yeah, it's a lot of communication.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of. And it's truly not salesy communication as much as making people realize, what those benefits can be over and above what maybe they've calculated in their brain a dollar value cost is.
I think, just kind of like introspectively looking at probably something that I, want to be better at is sometimes I get caught up so much in, I want to, let's get to work. Let's start working together.
Mm-hmm.
Where, I might sometimes shortcut that discussion about the value proposition. Where, I just, we're just, let's go solve the problem, as opposed to, hey, no, let's talk about this more, because I really want to explain why, this is more expensive than the guy down the street or whatever. What's your experience with?
I don't know. I mean, in your model and what you do, I think your sell isn't as hard to someone like me, because, we look at, having a professional come in who really understands the books, understands how things should be done, mm-hmm. and look and say, yeah, it might cost us X, but we just saved 10 hours a week.
Yeah.
And that 10 hours put to what I want to be doing and should be doing, versus trying to figure out some sort of FIFO problem or what have you.
Right, exactly. Whatever
CPAs
it is.
can come up with. That value to me is really obvious.
Yeah.
I don't know. I think our sale, getting people to see the value we bring, mm-hmm. takes an extra level. But I mean,
well, also, I mean, once you get a couple under your belt, right? You deliver,
mm-hmm.
You deliver a good solution, you deliver
right.
a good project. That kind of helps the momentum in the sales cycle, and then you're getting referrals, right? Like, it's funny. I was thinking back to how we met, mm-hmm. and it was actually, I don't know if you remember, but it was at a Biz Journal event at Bowstring.
Right.
And you were with Craig Snow.
Yeah.
And Craig was like,
knows
hey.
Everybody.
Yeah, exactly. And he was like, hey, Chris, you guys should meet each other. Yeah. We met, and then like a couple weeks later, we went to lunch. But I think he said, hey, Lisa, told me good things about you, and this and that. I was like, oh, perfect. It's kind of teased me up. But I'm sure it's been the same for you guys. You get a project, you deliver, and then the word of mouth is really important.
Lisa, who I love, just referred someone to us the other day. The networking power is mm-hmm. really important. So the longer you're at it and building that reputation, that's the best sales, the best marketing.
Yeah. So getting a little bit away from like the software and talking more about sales and marketing, it's in like real life business ownership, real life, not just sitting back and talking about a marketing plan. I mean, you can throw as much money as you want at Google Ads or whatever it is, Instagram, right. or whatever it is, but the value of just getting out in the community, serving on a board or going to networking events that, how would you describe your guys' strategy, or what do you guys see as more beneficial, a combination,
It's so hard. I tell a story from when I was practicing law on a case that I wound up handling for a woman that had a really tragic injury. And, in the law days, we were advertising and active in the community, and I was in politics. And so when I met her as a client, I said, I got to ask, how'd you find, it's a great question, any new client, how'd you find us?
Yeah.
I want to try and figure out what works. And I remember her saying, and she had worked at a grocery store, and I remember her saying, well, I saw your ads, and I knew who you were from being mayor.
Yeah, that helps.
And then somebody was in the TV and mentioned that, somebody in the store mentioned that you were in the store and you shopped there. I saw you there, and then I went and I looked at your webpage, and I called you. And I used to think, how did I get that client?
Yeah, I mean, like 5, 6 different types.
If I did all those other 5 things, but I shopped at a different store, I probably wouldn't have the client.
Yeah.
Right? And so that's the kind of stuff that used to keep me up at night.
Yeah.
I got to shop at more stores.
I got to shop at more stores.
Just forget all the money you're spending. But I mean, everything worked, and then again, nothing worked. So
Right.
it's very, I
Right.
mean, but the importance of being out there, building the reputation in a positive manner is so huge in getting the next sale in.
Yeah. And I mean, that's something that any entrepreneur or business owner, that translates to any type of business. You know, trying to get started up is just that.
Sure.
And, you know, and also, you know, that's hard work. You know, I mean, it's going to these events, you know, it's early in the mornings, it's lunchtime, it's the after hours events. And, you know, the harder you work, the luckier you get. You know, I mean.
Yeah. And the willingness to do it, it's more than just showing up. I mean, you can show up and stand against the wall, and
Yeah.
a lot of people have a tough time busting out of that shell.
It's hard to do.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not for everybody, that's
Correct.
for sure.
Yep.
That's for sure. So in our last kind of 10 minutes here, as we start to wind down, I want to talk about, you know, kind of taking off your PS Solutions hat and just, you know, being kind of like a business advisor from like a software and IT perspective. You know, I've got you know, for young entrepreneurs or other business owners that are looking to maybe automate and process stuff, you know, what kind of, you know, advice or questions or what types of things should people be thinking about as they're putting together a business plan and, hey, do I automate? Do I create a system?
I think a huge problem that I see are people who are afraid to start.
Okay.
And I'm not saying just quit everything and jump in, but the willingness to just not being afraid to fail or screw up early or somehow embarrass yourself
Yeah.
holds so many people back.
Yep.
And now the opposite, I mean, the advice isn't, you know, just willy-nilly give it a shot, jump in,
Right.
but not being afraid to start. Plan, you know, it's ready, aim, fire. And it's not ready, aim, 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 aim.
Yeah.
And a lot of that aim stuff goes on, and it holds people back. Then you wind up trying to find excuses. Well, you know, as soon as this happens, or as soon as that happens, and it becomes more of a crutch than it really should be, than what reality says you should do.
Yeah.
So the willingness to start, I think, is the big thing I've learned is if even on our level, if we're looking at a project to move into a different market or take on another technology stack or what have you,
Yeah.
The willingness to get in there, figure it out, and go,
Yep.
versus perhaps over planning to the point where
Analysis paralysis kind of deal.
There's that, and it becomes an excuse.
Yeah.
As soon as this happens, we're gonna go get them.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly.
But as soon as this happens, always becomes something else.
Yeah. Well, that reminds me of when we were at 1 Million Cups like 3 weeks ago. They showed a video on it, and it defined what a startup is.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, you know, help me say this right, but they say, you know, a startup is a business that is searching for a viable business model, right? It's like, we don't know exactly who we're going to be yet. Right. We've got this kind of high level vision and, you know, mission to change the world, you know, or solve a problem. We don't know exactly how we're going to do it, but that's what we're setting out to do.
Right, right.
And I kind of think that's a little bit about what you're saying is we have an idea where we want to be. We're not exactly sure how we're going to get there. We're going to put in some time and some diligence to put a plan together, understand what the risks are, but, you know, we're going to ready, aim, and fire. And if it goes south, hey, we learned something, and we can you know, kind of adjust.
Well, we're saying it's not the amount of times you fall; it's the amount of times you get up. And
there you go.
That fear of failure or embarrassing yourself, it turns out it's not as bad as you think, but it's something you've got to overcome. Otherwise, you're going to be held back in everything you do, and you know. What's fear kills more dreams than reality ever has.
There you go. Yeah.
Excuse me.
Yeah, no problem. So Bless you.
Hopefully your editing skills are high.
Now we keep it pretty raw and,
Yeah,
and uncut.
Great. Yeah, check my shirt.
Yeah.
All right.
So, yeah, I mean, you know, if so to that point, you know, I've got a business, you know, idea. I've got something that, you know, I've got some software plan. I've got some idea. You know, what's the first step to trying to, you know, as part of the aiming process? You know, what are some of the first steps? Like, who should I talk to? What books should I read? What, you know, content should I follow, or something like that?
One of my favorite books for entrepreneurs who are trying to test the waters, and it's a real simplified book, and it's almost, it's called The Mom Test.
Okay.
I don't know if you've
I
ever
don't know
seen
that
it.
one.
The idea of the mom test, and I am embarrassed, I can't remember the author, is that it's about customer discovery.
Yep.
And the smart way of doing customer discovery. And the concept behind the mom test, I think he says an example in the book of, let's say you were going to build, you see that your mother enjoys cooking and has all these cookbooks, and you think, I'm going to create a cookbook that's available on her iPad, so that she can just look it up, and she loves, you know, Turkish recipes. So I'm going to have a Turkish cookbook on an iPad, and it'll cost $50, but her cookbooks cost $80.
Yeah.
And then you go to your mother and say, Mom, if I did this, if I created, you know, this Turkish cookbook on an iPad for $50 instead of $80, would you want to buy one? And what's your mom going to say?
Probably going to say yes.
Yeah,
she wants
oh my
to support
God,
it.
you're so smart, that's the greatest idea. And the whole premise of the book is learning how to ask the right questions as you're starting. To figuring out, you know, not telling people what you're doing, find out what their problem is. Make sure if you believe you know the problem, you know, don't set yourself up for failure by asking the wrong questions. Truly, you know, start asking the right questions, like what's your biggest frustration with cooking? What's your, what have you? But the point is not telling people what you're going to do necessarily, because human nature is they're going to say to you, well, that's a great idea. When you're done, I'm going to buy that.
Right, exactly.
And then you get done and they say, well, you know, not quite there.
I kind of like my books,
Can you
actually.
call me in 4 to 6 weeks? Or,
Yeah.
All the, so learning from the beginning how to ask the right questions, make sure you're solving a problem, I think is huge.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, I think that, you know, and the way to get good at asking questions is to practice.
Yeah.
You know, have conversations with people, read books. I'm not saying that I'm good at any of this. It's just, you know, things that we see that successful people say, and such as yourself. I mean,
Yeah.
I think that's a good place to start. And not everybody can be Steve Jobs and just, you know, create something that nobody wants, and then all of a sudden they're like, actually, I think I want all of that.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
But well, cool, Wayne.
It's been great.
Yeah, thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
I appreciate you coming on, and I'd like to end. You know, if you could just, if people want to get in touch with you to talk about a business problem or a solution, or, you know, what's the best way for people to get in contact with you?
Email's easy, which is whippo@pssolutions.net.
Okay.
I'm also on LinkedIn.
Yeah, you're pretty active on
pretty
LinkedIn.
responsive on LinkedIn too.
And then you guys, your website is
pssolutions.net.
pssolutions.net.
Yeah.
Cool.
Thanks.
American Solutions.
American software for American business.
I love it. American software for American business.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Thanks
Thanks again, Wayne.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it, man.